They flew us out to Vermont under the banner of a leadership retreat, but everything about it felt too polished, to be honest. The resort looked like something out of a holiday catalog. Lakeside views, reclaimed wood chandeliers, lavender-scented linens. The welcome gifts were champagne flutes etched with the phrase, "Efficiency is elegance." And I remember thinking, if they have to say it out loud, it probably isn't. By the time I arrived, most of the directors and VPs had already scattered across the property in curated groups, trust exercises by the fire pit, mindfulness sessions in curated birch groves. It was all Instagram ready, as if someone had thrown a corporate tax write-off into a lifestyle magazine and hit publish. We weren't there to bond. We were there to be observed, measured, trimmed. I'd been with the company for 11 years. Abigail, Vice President of Strategic Development. I built our analytics arm from 3 confused interns and a broken dashboard into a $60 million engine that supported half the executive team's bonuses. I wasn't flashy. I didn't posture in meetings. But my projections were always accurate, and I had the kind of memory that scared people. The opening keynote took place in a lakeside pavilion with floor-to-ceiling windows and a fog machine someone thought would be energizing. Coldplay hummed through a rented sound system as our CEO, Blake Caldwell, took the stage in a quarter-zip and sneakers, like he was about to solve climate change with a bar graph. Blake had good teeth and a better sense of timing. He paused for laughs that didn't come, smiled through them anyway, then launched into a monologue about vision, velocity, and vertical integration. Somewhere around minute 17, I stopped pretending to take notes. Something felt off, too scripted, too clean. Then he said my name. He smiled wider when he did it. Said the company was entering a bold new era, that certain legacy roles would be realigned to meet evolving needs. He said I had served the organization well, that I was now free to explore new adventures. I didn't feel free. I felt ambushed. There was a strange pause in the room, like no one knew whether to clap. Then someone did. Then a few more. Polite, scattered applause. One of my clients looked down at his shoes. Jenny, my assistant, was wiping her eyes behind a pair of sunglasses she didn't need indoors. A golf cart appeared outside the pavilion with my luggage already loaded. My ID badge had been deactivated. My calendar access revoked. I wasn't a person anymore. I was a footnote to a speech about transformation. I stood there with a glass of champagne still half full, bubbles still rising. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't even blink. I let my fingers press into the palm of my hand until they left crescent-shaped marks, until the sting felt real enough to remind me that I hadn't imagined it. Blake was already moving on, already pivoting to slides about acceleration and synergy. My chair had been quietly filled by someone who looked barely old enough to rent a car. I walked out. The wheels of my suitcase clicked against the cobblestone walkway like a slow drumbeat. Somewhere behind me, another round of applause started, louder this time. Then my phone buzzed. It was a number I hadn't seen in years. The message was only 3 words. Let's ruin him. Marcus Lang didn't do offices. When his assistant texted me the address, I expected a boardroom with cold-pressed juice and glass walls. What I got was a crooked dockhouse perched over Lake Champlain, with peeling white paint and a chipped Adirondack chair facing the water like it had earned the right to be left alone. He didn't stand when I arrived, just tilted his chin slightly and muttered, "He really did it. On stage. The gall." I stood there in heels and a blazer, still carrying the scent of expensive hand lotion and corporate humiliation, half expecting this to be some kind of investor loyalty test. Maybe Blake and Marcus were 2 heads of the same snake, waiting to see if I'd grovel or spit. But Marcus didn't look at me like a pawn. He didn't even look me in the eye. Not yet. I spoke first. My voice was low, steady, colder than the wind coming off the lake. He gutted me mid-slide deck like a salmon. Efficiency. Marcus gave a dry laugh, the kind that didn't touch his face. Blake couldn't spell efficiency without a PowerPoint and a fall guy. He motioned to the chair beside him, and I sat down, ignoring the sharp smell of mildew and old wood. No small talk, no condolences. just silence, stretching between us like a loaded wire. "How much do you hate him right now?" he asked. It caught me off guard. The bluntness. I didn't answer right away. The truth was, I didn't hate Blake, not yet. Once, I even respected him. I hired him back when he was just a numbers guy with charm and no vision. But over the last 2 years, something shifted. He started speaking in buzzwords and building an echo chamber of junior yes men who thought emoji reactions were a substitute for leadership. "I'm not here for a revenge fantasy," I said. "I'm not interested in some pissing contest between board members." "Good," Marcus replied, "because I'm not offering fantasy. I'm offering justice." He reached into his coat and pulled out a slim black tablet. A few swipes. Then he turned it toward me. Charts, revenue lines, internal memos, screenshots of performance metrics that didn't add up, emails that had my name on them, emails I never wrote, or at least never saw before they were scrubbed clean from the system. "He's been misreporting to shareholders," Marcus said. "Inflating projections with ghost numbers." My analyst flagged it months ago, but I didn't have an entry point. Until now. I stared at the screen. Q3 revenue projections had been adjusted post-board meeting. A product launch was credited with growth that hadn't occurred. And buried between the budget notes was something called a vertical strategy review, a phantom file, no ownership, no audit trail. "He cut you," Marcus said, "because you were the last adult in the room. You saw through the smoke. And that made you dangerous." I wanted to deny it, to keep some distance, but the numbers didn't lie, and neither did the sinking feeling in my gut. "What do you want from me?" I asked, arms folded but voice steady. "Your memory," he said, "your insight, your receipts, and your discretion. We build a case for the board, for the SEC, for whoever needs to see it. And what do I get?" "Your name back," Marcus said, "your record cleared, and maybe a chance to burn his castle to the ground." A gull screamed overhead like punctuation. I didn't shake his hand and I didn't smile. I just nodded once. And that's when the alliance began. In a damp chair by a quiet lake, between a bitter woman, a billionaire with a vendetta, and a shared target who had made the mistake of thinking no one was watching. The flight home felt like punishment. No champagne, no curated playlist, just recycled air, crushed peanuts, and the echo of Blake's voice pitching synergy over fog machines. When I walked through my front door, it was like stepping into someone else's life. Silent, blank, no welcome texts, no missed calls, nothing. I tried to log into my company laptop out of habit. The screen flashed once, then turned gray. "This account has been deactivated." Even my health insurance portal showed access denied, like I died in Vermont, and this was some digital afterlife where no one remembered I ever existed. A few hours later, an email from HR hit my personal inbox. Generic, cold. A severance offer tucked inside a PDF with more redacted sections than actual language. 6 months' pay. But only if I signed the non-disclosure agreement and a non-disparagement clause that may as well have said, "Keep your mouth shut or lose everything." I didn't sign it. Instead, I sat on my couch, poured a glass of whiskey the color of scorched caramel, and stared at the ceiling. I tried calling 3 people I had mentored for years, straight to voicemail. One had already blocked me on LinkedIn. My name wasn't just removed, it was radioactive. Then at 12:47 in the morning, a message came through. It was from Jenny. She'd been with me for 4 years. Assistant, strategist, part-time therapist. She once built a color-coded war room on Trello to help me prepare for a quarterly earnings pitch. Her text was short. "I know you're not done. I'm still in. You signal, delete this." I laughed. Or maybe sobbed. Hard to tell. We met the next morning at a strip mall coffee shop 2 towns over. She wore sunglasses and sat facing the door like she expected a corporate SWAT team to burst in at any minute. He's already memory holing you, she said, sipping chamomile like it was contraband. Your name's gone from the internal wiki. They reassigned your projects to that Harvard intern with the loud blazer. Someone deleted your archive folder. They're rewriting history, I said. They always do. But I backed up your Q2 reviews. Something felt off. She slid a flash drive across the table like it was contraband. No label, still warm from her hand. That night, I plugged it into an old backup laptop. The machine groaned like it hadn't been touched since college, but it booted up. Inside the drive was a graveyard, reports I didn't remember signing, graphs that looked polished but wrong, sales milestones credited to product bundles that hadn't been approved, a partnership memo with a company that had only expressed interest, not signed anything. But there it was, marked as closed, revenue booked. And then there were the KPIs, doctoring so subtle. It took someone like me to notice. Forecasts, adjusted for optimism. User metrics shaved down in margin notes and fluffed up in slide decks. My initials at the bottom of all of it. Except I never approved any of it. They had taken my name, my credibility, and wrapped it around fake numbers like a camouflage jacket. I wasn't just erased. I'd been weaponized, used as a shield for a house of cards. I stared at the screen, my hands clenched into fists on my knees. This wasn't just betrayal. It was identity theft. At 3:26 in the morning, I called Marcus. He picked up on the first ring. I'm in, I said, and he's dumber than I thought. Good, he said. Then it's time to start collecting kindling. It started with a spreadsheet. I called it Departures 2023. Just a quiet list I'd kept over the years. Names that had disappeared without warning. Some were colleagues I'd shared war rooms with. Others were fresh-faced hires who asked the wrong question in the wrong meeting and were gone by Monday. One had been a close friend. Most just vanished into silence. Now, I started dialing them. Not texting, not emailing. I called, old school, like back when exit interviews weren't just legal chloroform. First was Rita Mendoza, a former product lead who'd been phased out after failing to adapt to Blake's so-called agile vision. When she picked up, I barely got a word in before she burst out laughing. Let me guess, she said. He finally pushed you out because your PowerPoints had too many facts. Then came Evan Cho. Smart, principled, used to run analytics with me before a sudden audit flagged his code access. He never got a real reason, just a box and a walk to the elevator. They told me my forecast wasn't collaborative enough, he said. Collaborative meaning flattering. One by one, they started talking, and once the first few did, it was like a dam broke. Same phrases, same excuses. Phrases like value redundancy and cultural misalignment. Death by buzzword. Patterns started to form. Then a message came in from someone I barely remembered. Leo Park, junior analyst, quiet kid. Sat 2 desks away from Jenny for 6 months before being let go after a restructure. He sent me a link to an encrypted folder and a simple note. You were right to call. I kept a copy. Inside were 2 slide decks, identical in layout, almost. One had been presented to the board and shareholders at the end of last year. It showcased an explosive growth pipeline, 3 product lines, each with ambitious projections, client logos, market validation. The second was the real one. 2 products were legitimate, with dev tickets, team assignments, go-to-market timelines. The third was called Novaori. I'd never seen the name before. No engineers had worked on it, no roadmap, no UI wireframes, no documentation, just a placeholder name, dropped into forecasts like a seed. Novaori had been used to inflate our Q4 projections by nearly 30%, and it didn't exist. Jenny confirmed it a day later with her usual quiet intensity. We've never shipped anything labeled Novaori, she said. There's nothing in the vendor logs, no code commits, it's vapor. I asked if she could print the logs for backup. She hesitated. Not from my floor. I'd have to use the main print room. It logs every job. Is it worth the risk? I asked. She didn't answer. That night, she called me breathless. They stopped me mid-print, she whispered. I told them it was HR tax forms, but they're watching now. They've started locking folders. I felt it behind my eyes. Not panic, not fear, focus. They knew. They didn't know how much we had. But they'd seen the smoke. I texted Marcus. He's scrubbing hard, I wrote. We need to move soon. Let him dig, he replied. The deeper, the better. Jenny stayed in. So did Rita. Evan forwarded his exit interview notes. Leo uploaded screenshots of file metadata, timestamps, version edits, author tags. Every step deeper revealed more fiction dressed as progress. We weren't some grand rebellion. No matching hoodies, no basement meetings. Just a growing thread of voices, stitched together by quiet fury. Blake called it innovation. I was starting to call it fraud. The shell company was called Verdant Axis, just vague and polished enough to sound real, like a sustainability-forward analytics startup with a sleek mission and venture capital behind it. Marcus had his lawyers file the paperwork in Delaware. They even built a LinkedIn page overnight. A stock photo CTO, a bearded guy from Estonia with enough credibility to pass a cursory check. I was listed as their business development consultant. Slightly different name, different haircut, nothing too obvious. Amanda Reeve. Just enough to slip past filters, but still get in the room. The plan was simple. Blake had built an entire mythology around being sought after. He couldn't resist a sniff of interest, especially not one that hinted at pre-acquisition value. He lived for that kind of external validation. And we were going to give it to him. Just long enough to let him talk. The meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon, private Zoom. No recording allowed on their side, of course. Ours was a different story. Let's just say Marcus had hired a compliance expert with a moral compass held together by duct tape and coffee. I logged in from a co-working space in Tribeca. Blank white wall, fake plant behind me, ring light borrowed from Jenny's cousin. My name on the screen said Ava Reeves. When Blake's camera turned on, I didn't flinch. He smiled that practiced politician smile he used when pitching investors. Same over-tan skin, same gelled hair, same confidence he'd worn the day he cut me loose mid-keynote like I was a line item. If he recognized me, he didn't let it show. He launched into the pitch without hesitation. Clean, confident, charming. We're seeing north of 60% quarter-over-quarter growth in our new vertical, he said, leaning back in his chair. Nova Ore's platform is driving Tier 2 market penetration, significant churn reduction, meaningful engagement uplift. I let him talk. He went on about predictive algorithms, scalable integration, data pipelines. He name-dropped Fortune 500 clients he couldn't name, referenced strategic partners who had never signed anything more formal than a LinkedIn message. He was selling a dream. Except this time, we had a receipt. I asked questions, carefully measured, just enough to keep the illusion going. How soon would Verdant Axis be able to integrate with Nova Ore's backend? He didn't hesitate. We're pre-integration ready. APIs are live. Market validation is complete. We're already in talks with 2 telecoms for beta access. Translation: it's vaporware with a font package. Everything he said was being recorded. Video, audio, on-screen presentation logs. Clean, clear, time-stamped, legally sound. For the first time in weeks. I felt nothing. Not anger, not grief, not fear. Just clarity. This wasn't personal anymore. It was math. A fraud equation solving itself. When the call ended, Blake smiled and gave a casual, "Looking forward to next steps." I smiled back. "Of course. We'll be in touch." I closed the laptop, sent the file to Marcus with one word in the subject line. Done. He called 5 minutes later, his voice calm, sharp. "We got him. SEC grade. If we time this right, he doesn't just lose his job, he loses everything." "Not yet," I said. "He's not done digging his grave." And then Marcus told me about the sale. The real reason Blake was desperate for one last push, he was courting Aurealis, a European firm with a reputation for buying companies, gutting them, and flipping the scraps. Blake had promised them a high-growth pivot. He wanted to close the deal in under 3 weeks. That was the window. 3 weeks to blow it up from the inside. He wanted to disappear rich. I was going to make sure he crawled out with nothing. The clock was ticking. Blake was pushing hard to close the deal with Aurealis, a European investment group known for gutting companies and calling it optimization. He branded it as strategic expansion during internal calls, but everyone who'd done their homework knew better. If the acquisition went through, hundreds of jobs would be on the line, product lines would vanish overnight, and the only person guaranteed to walk away richer was Blake. 3 weeks. That's how long we had before the paperwork was signed. The ink dried, and the lies were cemented into someone else's balance sheet. Marcus was ready to go nuclear. I wasn't. Not yet. Then Elaine Rothsky called me. She'd been on the board since the company's first seed round. A sharp, gray-haired strategist with a stare that could kill a deal with a single raised eyebrow. We met in a public park on purpose. No office, no paper trail. She didn't waste time. "You're behind the leaks," she said, voice flat. "The journalist, the blind posts, the internal chatter. That's you." I didn't confirm or deny, just waited. "You used to be the most principled strategist we had," she said. "Ethical, disciplined. And now this?" She paused. "Is this really about exposing fraud, or is it because he humiliated you?" The words didn't sting the way she thought they would. I'd already asked myself the same thing, more than once. What if it was both? What if I was furious and he was also lying? "I'm not looking for redemption," I said. "I'm looking for the truth." She gave a tight nod, then added one more line before walking away. "If this burns, it takes the whole company with it." That night, I stared at the files on my laptop, the recordings, the falsified decks, the metadata trails Jenny had pulled from deep inside archived servers. Every document, every number, every click was another match waiting to be struck, and I wasn't sure anymore whether I was trying to stop a fraud or set fire to my own shame. I called Jenny. She answered on the first ring. "They're shredding files on the 4th floor," she whispered. "And my badge just got flagged for audit." I didn't say anything. After a beat, she added, "Are you okay?" "No," I said. "Elaine found me, accused me of making this personal." "She's not wrong," Jenny said quietly, "but that doesn't mean she's right either." I closed my eyes. The weight of it settled in my chest like lead. "You were the one person who actually built this place," Jenny added. "And now he's trying to sell it off to vultures who'll strip it for parts." That landed harder than anything Elaine had said, because Jenny was right. This wasn't about me anymore. This wasn't about pride. Blake wasn't just trying to disappear with a golden parachute. He was trying to sell the wreckage of everything we had built, dressed up in a fraud-soaked ribbon. I didn't care if I got credit. I didn't care if my name was restored. But I couldn't let him win. I opened a secure browser, composed a burner email to the SEC, subject line, "Material misrepresentation of financials." Attachment, "Internal evidence enclosed." I hovered over send, then clicked. If the building was going to burn, so be it. But Blake would be the one locked inside. The article dropped just after dawn. "Ghost metrics and phantom products. Inside the empire of lies at Blake Corp." It spread like fire in a server room. Within minutes, it was trending on LinkedIn, Reddit, Slack threads, group chats lit up with screenshots, speculation, rage. The Atlantic Ledger had it all: doctored earnings decks, the non-existent Novaore platform, inflated user metrics, fake logos pulled from Google Images. Multiple anonymous sources confirmed internal audits had been buried. One source was quoted saying, "We stopped making software a year ago. We started making PowerPoints." The silence from the executive floor was immediate and deafening. By lunch, it was panic. Blake struck back fast. A lesser-known business blog ran a story about a disgraced former VP under internal investigation for misappropriation of funds. My name, a grainy photo from a company picnic in 2018, and a paragraph claiming I had rerouted wellness budget money for personal consulting and luxury travel. Anonymous sources, manufactured quotes, even the tone reeked of PR scrub. I didn't respond. Not online, not in print. Not to the podcast host who emailed me asking if I had regrets about weaponizing feminism. My lawyer, retired DOJ and mostly into wine these days, gave me one sentence of advice. Don't feed the fire. Let them burn out. Jenny called that night. Her voice was quiet but tight. He's spinning it hard, she said. People are scared. 2 analysts quit mid-shift. He's booking flights, probably trying to vanish. I said nothing. Let him run. There's nowhere high enough he won't fall from. The next morning, Marcus called. We're moving, he said. Emergency board meeting is set. They're rattled. Article. SEC tip. Everything's teetering. You ready to walk in and finish it? I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the one who got blindsided in Vermont. She didn't shake anymore. Her edges were sharper now, hollowed out in the right places. I'm ready, I said. The boardroom smelled like panic masked with citrus disinfectant. 12 members sat around a walnut table the size of a runway. Blake stood at the head, posture perfect, suit darker than usual. He opened with charm, as always. We can't let a hit piece derail our momentum, he said. This is a coordinated attack from a bitter former exec. Legal is reviewing. He didn't look at Marcus, but the air in the room changed. Elaine sipped her coffee like it might turn to acid. A few board members nodded, unsure. Blake went on. Noveore is real. We're in stealth mode. The metrics are projections, not promises. Our partners understand that. Marcus tapped his tablet. A small speaker on the table clicked. Blake's voice filled the room. We're seeing north of 60% growth. Noveore's APIs are live. Market validation is already behind us. Dead silence. Blake's face didn't register fear, only fury. You're recording private investor calls now, he snapped. That's unethical. You lied on, Marcus said, calm, clear. To investors, to the board. That's not a pitch. That's fraud. Elaine set down her cup. Who else was on that call? That's when the doors opened. I walked in. No badge, just a file box. Black Sharpie on the side. Truth. Some gasped. Paul, the one with a closet full of fleece vests, flinched like I'd brought a weapon. I placed the binders on the table. Inside, doctored reports, fake customer decks, verification from 5 current and former employees, all tied to Noveore, all time-stamped. I didn't raise my voice. The product doesn't exist. The revenue doesn't exist. What does exist is a pattern of manipulation designed to inflate value before a sale. Blake opened his mouth. I met his eyes. Don't. He closed it. Marcus looked around. I moved to vote for immediate termination for cause. No delay. 12 hands rose, unanimous. Blake didn't argue, didn't speak, just stood up, hollow, waiting for someone to tell him it was a mistake. No one did. I didn't want the title. I didn't want the office. But someone had to hold the wheel while the wreckage settled. They named me interim CEO by unanimous vote. No press release, no photo op. Just a single line in a board memo that said I'd be staying on until further notice. I read it once and moved on. I didn't redecorate. I didn't take meetings I didn't need. I didn't change the playlist in the lobby. I just got to work. I shut down the vanity subsidiaries first. The side hustles Blake had spun up for branding points and ego boosts. I canceled the influencer contract. I cut the retreat budget. I pulled the plug on the podcast no one asked for. Then I went after the rot. Middle managers who spent more time evangelizing culture than managing teams were given severance and a clean exit. Engineers who'd been shoved aside for speaking up were brought back. Not with promises, but with purpose. Jenny got a promotion, a raise, and an office near sunlight for the first time in 4 years. I made hard decisions without making speeches. I handed out real severance with honest handshakes. I restored what I could and quietly let go of what couldn't be saved. I didn't post about it. No LinkedIn thought pieces, no victory quotes, no grateful for the journey captions, just silence. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing a woman can do after being erased is rebuild without fanfare. On my last day, Jenny walked into my office. No clipboard, just a flash drive in her hand, unmarked, still warm from her palm. "I found this buried in the compliance archive," she said. "Took me 3 tries to decrypt it." I plugged it in, clicked through the folders. There they were, a thread of emails between Blake and legal, directives to remove my name from patent filings on 3 proprietary data visualization tools I had built from scratch. His plan was to refile the credits under corporate co-authorship, a stealth move to wash me out of every innovation I'd ever touched. He hadn't just tried to fire me. He tried to erase me. I didn't even speak at first. I just sat back in my chair, the same one they made me fight to keep in the renovation budget last year, and stared at the screen. Then I smiled, not wide, not giddy, sharp. Let's erase him instead. I closed the laptop, handed Jenny the flash drive like it was just another task. She didn't ask what I'd do with it. She didn't need to. She knew. I walked out of that office without looking back. No press conference, no farewell letter, just the hum of the elevator and the feeling of something finally settled. Blake once said efficiency was the soul of innovation. Turns out, nothing's more efficient than justice.